Greetings, everybody. Erv Lenzy here. So I wanted to kind of record a episode 4.5, and I wanted to just talk about a few things and where I am with the podcast and what's coming up. So I'm gonna post a the story so far. It's an interesting little conversation that I generated with Notebook LM. What it does is you feed it source material, and then it creates a faux podcast between two AI characters, and it's actually really good. They take everything from the first 4 episodes and break it down from Henrietta's perspective, and just kind of talk about the story so far. So I think it's going to be important for anybody following the podcast that you have taken time to make sure you've listened to the first 4 podcasts, because this is a linear story. To understand where I'm going to go next, you do have to have listened to the first 4. So they do stack on each other. So if you haven't listened to 4 episodes before you listen to episode 5, be sure that you do. And basically where we're at is Charlie has disappeared. And he has a new wife and a new family. The questions that we have at the end of episode 4 are, number 1, does Bachelor Charlie and Gambler Charlie, my Charlie's Gambler Charlie, is Charles Newton the same as Henrietta's Charlie Henderson? And I kind of adopted him. That's kind of where we left in episode 4. Was I don't have definitive proof that they're the same person. I have 2 people that match closely living in the same area of Texas, but I can't for sure, as of the end of episode 4, link myself to them. If you keep listening, you'll find out that I can. A little bit of a spoiler. So to find out how I learned this, and this whole thing is what really caused me to make this podcast, was really researching it and finding out more of the truth. And post pandemic, there's been a lot of genealogy data going digital, being released to Family Search, to Ancestry.com, and a lot of other online databases that we've just never had before. And it's amazing to me. I've been a genealogist since I was a kid, literally. I've been both sides of my family were really big into family history, and it's absolutely amazing the amount. We used to have to go to the genealogy library, and I was spoiled. I grew up in Houston, and south of downtown is the world's, at the time, was the world's second largest genealogy library. It was second only to the one in Salt Lake. So I could go spend a Saturday. You could spend all day down there, loading microfilm, scrolling through it. And there's that, I believe it was up on the 2nd floor, and it was just this really dimly lit area where you were scrolling through the microfilm, occasionally microfiche, but it was usually microfilm, especially for the census. And now you just click, tap, and you pull the info up. But as time goes on, we get more death certificates, birth and marriage records, and that is what I'm stumbling into. I'm stumbling into more 2 things: more birth and death records, which you didn't. Even going to the genealogy library, you had access to the birth and death indexes, but you had to be smart enough to know who to look for, because there's so many people in a family. You go back 4 generations and then come back down and catch all the uncles and cousins and second and third and fourth cousins. A lot of people. Who do you look for? Well, you start out looking for your main ancestors, your grandparents, great grandparents. But see, I was born in the 70s, and so my great grandfather was born in 1880. But that's only because my dad had me late in life. But even then, people older than me had a lot of problems, because if you have somebody born before 1950, then you might not find a birth or death certificate, because government records before World War II were sketchy at best. But your best bet was looking in the index. And so you'd look up your grandparents, great grandparents, maybe an aunt or an uncle, but usually not. Usually we're worried about your main ancestral line going back. So I have recently, so that's where I discovered Baby Henderson. So I would never have known to look for Baby Henderson, born and died in 1912. Um, Sometime around after 1910, Houston County started collecting vital statistics, and I have found 2 deaths in 1912. I found Baby Henderson, and that told me that they were still together in 1912. And Henrietta was listed, and that was a birth certificate. But I have found a death certificate for the oldest boy now. And that's an amazing find, but I've got just the index entry. I don't have the full certificate. I sent off an email today, kind of as a request, to see if they can get me what's on the certificate. I have a certificate number, name, and everything, so I contacted the Vital Statistics office for Houston County. We'll see if they email me back anytime soon. So, really nailing down what happened that preceded Charlie's disappearance. It sounds like things got tough because there was people dying, and it sounds like he had already met another woman, and he just decided to change his mind after 6 kids. Anyway, it's absolutely insane. The story of Charlie's death is violent and explosive, to say the least. That will be the finale. How he died, the circumstances of his death, and it only led to more questions in my mind. It only led to more questions. So the next episode, episode 5, is going to be about his father, because I'm very curious about their movements. Because the more I research R.A. Henderson, Robert Alonzo, the more I find he has moved around. He moved around almost immediately. Charlie was born in 1880, and by the late 80s, he was gone. He left Fannin County, and he just kept moving further southwest in Texas. He was in at least 3, 4, maybe 5 different counties over the decades of his life. So, by the time Charlie was 20, they lived in at least 3 different places. There's some unverified family stories. I have a cousin, I haven't had contact with in a while. My cousin said that there's a story that Charlie had a big blowout with his father and left home. But see, my problem is that story matches another story that I heard about my grandfather, who had a big blow up with his stepfather, Mr. Mercer, and left home. Mr. Mercer was evidently, and I mean, I can't confirm this, and who would have told me this? Would have been Granny. She would have told me this. And it may be, I have at least 3, maybe 4 cassettes of interviews I did with her, where she says that Mr. Mercer was physically abusive to Grandpa. He used to beat him with a whip. And once Grandpa got big enough, he beat the crap out of him and left and ran away. And he told him, if you come after me, I'll kill you. It's the way life was in Texas. After the closing of the Old West, some things didn't quite change. Some things stayed the same, and it was a rough time. It was a rough time to live, and if you weren't willing to defend yourself, um, so I've heard that story, except with Charlie inserted, and I have problems with that because it matches Grandpa more than it does Charlie. Then again, I don't have much information on either one in relation to their early years. One thing my dad told me one time, he told me that his father told him that he had lots of money in his pocket during the 20s. Before he met my grandma, before the Depression in the early, so 100 years ago, in the early 1920s, that he was fairly wealthy. He had lots of money. They grew up poor as dirt. Depression. Whoever knows that you're going to need money when you have it, you use it, and most people don't put back. So, what was he doing that he had lots of money in the 1920s? That would have been after he left Mercer. And I think Mercer was dead by 1930 anyway. And Grandma and Grandpa got married around 28. So there was almost 10 years of overlap between the time Grandma and Grandpa got married and the time Miss Mercer, as my grandma knew her, Henrietta Mercer, but Henrietta died. So yeah. So that, the story thus far is what happened to the family. In the 1930 census, we see Charlie living in Abilene with Mike and their boarders working in the oil industry. And then we see Marie, which is his second wife. We see her living as a boarder with the youngest daughter. And I'm horrible with names, and I didn't plan on this, and I don't have the names in front of me. But they had 3 kids. The youngest daughter, in 1930, and she's a housekeeper, and the daughter's just labeled housekeeper's daughter. But where's the middle child? The middle child disappears. I figured that out. So I'm going to be doing a podcast in a couple of weeks about that story. It's an interesting story. I won't spoil it in any part, but I had to do a lot of research, and this is recent stuff. I didn't know this stuff before the last couple of months. So it's very interesting. There's some interesting tidbits in that. That'll be in a couple of weeks. What happened to the rest of his kids? I will tell you this. He completely disappeared from their lives. The mother died and left 2 orphaned girls because he wasn't around. He did not, as far as I know, didn't come to the rescue. I found them. Oh, yes, I found them. Charlie's nowhere in sight. Mike, he runs away. I don't know if Charlie abandoned him too, or if he just got mad about everything and just left. So it's like Mike disappeared and does not appear to ever return. And he's in a different state. He went in a completely different direction. He never lives in Texas again. And it's like the same pattern. It's the same pattern of abandonment. It's generational. The idea that the decisions that we make affect not just you, my friends. They affect our children, our grandchildren, and those around us. Generational decisions, things that we don't think about, we don't think are going to affect other people, in fact, do. And thinking about this whole story over a century later, I can see the effects of it on my family and myself. And I'm 4 generations removed from Charlie. So, all right, guys, this isn't meant to be a full episode or anything like that. I'm also going to release, I think I might just release it to YouTube. So, if you want to see the story so far, it's the faux podcast generated by Notebook LM. That's on Google. Go over there. It's going to be about 12 minutes long, and it'll kind of last time kind of it's about 12 13 minutes, something like that, and it's going to be something to the effect of last time on the podcast, but it's generated by Notebook LM. I really enjoy it. If you haven't used Notebook LM, go give it a try. I don't want to feel like I'm doing an advertisement for Notebook LM, but you can feed it source material like a chapter of a book or a YouTube video or a list of YouTube videos, and you can generate a podcast that will tell you what's in the source material that you've given it. So if you need to study for a test, this is another way that you can generate material, and it also has other stuff you can generate. Just check it out, Notebook LM. You'll have to log in with your Google account to use it, but I thoroughly enjoy it. All right, guys, thanks for watching. Appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of your week, and I'll see you in the next podcast.